TCI is brought to you by Spendthrift Stallion Golden Sense, the brilliant Santa Anita Derby winner, two-time Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile champ, and best son of leading sire Into Mischief. Look for first yearlings selling this summer.
Welcome back to TCI, your inside track to the Triple Crown. Alongside Joel Cunningham, I'm John Siegel. Well, Joel, we have two races to recap before we talk about this weekend's races. Let's start off in Louisiana. Let's talk a little bit about Girvin. You know, this is a horse that won the Risen Star. We felt like he had a good chance coming into this race. Tell me, what did you think of his performance?
Let's take it at the top of the stretch and watch the race replay, John. And you'll see here that Local Hero actually was able to rate in this race. I thought he was going to run a big one here, making the lead here for Steve Asmussen, but you see here the closers had enough pace to run at. I thought it was a moderate pace. I didn't think it was a tremendous pace, but it wasn't a fast race in the end. You see Girvin here powering up the outside here to take the lead. He proved best with that outside trip like we talked about. And Patch, the horse with one right eye, you see him rally up the inside, I guess, to be able to see a target. That may have been the strategy for Patch to be able to, you know, to always have a target as opposed to the fact that he doesn't have a left eye, John. He can't really move out and see what he's running at there. So Patch comes up the rail, comes up the inside, rallies valiantly. The race only returns a low 90s buyer, so it's not one of the fastest Louisiana Derbies you've ever seen. You see, even though I think Girvin was a commanding winner, quite a few horses there, pretty compact at the wire, nobody really separated. Didn't think it was a great field. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of impact it can make on the Derby. Certainly Girvin's your points leader now, you know, going into the Kentucky Derby winner with the win in the Risen Star and Louisiana Derby. So he's taking command of those fairgrounds races. He'll have to face considerably better and really get faster over the course of the next month.
All right, well, let's move now to the Florida Derby. And Joel, this race here, you know, going into it, Gunnavera won the Fountain of Youth very impressively. Going into the weekend, you were a little concerned about him in there, but you were pretty high on an allowance winner named Always Dreaming. Tell me, what did you think of the race in the Florida Derby?
Well, what you didn't see at the start was Javier Castellano absolutely darting to the rail to save all the ground he could. I thought that was a pretty smart move because realistically, he needed the speed to back up for that horse to have any shot, and the speed didn't back up. I mean, you see they turned 110 and change pretty quick, 3/4 for 3-year-olds. Always Dreaming had all kinds of horse at all times, turning for home. You see the turn of foot and the acceleration there. We talked about how well he was training, and he put it on display. Showed that 71 buyer in that allowance race was where sometimes you get in trouble by looking at these speed figures, quite honestly, John. Visual performance, the way he was training, he was sitting on a big race, and he proves much the best like we thought in here. Big gallop out the final time, 147 and 2. Second, you know, it was the fastest Florida Derby since Alydar in 1978. The problem with that is it only got a 97 buyers. That tells you just how fast that track was. Horses were getting over the top of it. They were going fast. It was typical Gulfstream to where I think Gunnavera had no shot in the race. He comes rallying late, almost gets second in there behind Mark Cassie's horse. Is third, but don't worry about Gunnavera. As long as he comes out of this okay, ships well, you know, shows that his weight and condition is not an issue like he's, you know, maybe a horse that is, you know, fired a little too big too early. I think Gunnavera is still a top 3, top 5 Kentucky Derby contender because I know at Churchill Downs, that track will play a lot better to his style, and I think he'll get a 1.25 miles.
Yeah, it was almost like the way that they rode him. I mean, I know they're trying to save ground, but it also was like you could see that they were looking past this race a little bit and trying to school him and to get him to kind of come running late like that. I thought, you mentioned him being a little light going in. I thought he did look a little light. So now, like you mentioned, they'll have a few weeks. They can try to get some weight back on him, get him shipped in. I think he'll be okay for the Kentucky Derby too. What's interesting though, going into, you know, from last weekend, you mentioned Girvin was he's the points leader in the Kentucky Derby, but did he do enough to get on the TCI top 10?
Let's go to the TCI top 10 now, John, and you'll see there are no arrows on this top 10 because there's no changes for me. I didn't see a performance that I felt a significant improvement was in place to where they warranted being on the top 10. And even Always Dreaming, I mean, we had a good evaluation on him. He was in the top 5 for us going into the Florida Derby. And to me, he validates that position. But right now, you know, I'm gonna see where the chips fall, John. We still have some major preps this weekend. We have the Arkansas Derby next weekend. So there are some big time races here, and I just don't think I'm ready to move up Always Dreaming until I see some of the performances by the 4 colts on top of him right now in my top 10. So, you know, while I was, you know, we had some confirmation there that Always Dreaming certainly is the goods, and now I think he goes in the Kentucky Derby as a serious player. He's a fresh horse. And we talked about it. You want to compare the way Gunnevera came into the Florida Derby and the Kentucky Derby to Always Dreaming. Gunnevera danced all the dances, has not had a break since June of his 2-year-old year, and you wonder if maybe that pushed him a little over the top. Always Dreaming was managed, you know, to where he didn't fight the hard fights. They sort of worked him up in the mornings, let him go through his maiden and allowance condition before they took on the heavy lifting, and he was able to now be a Grade 1 winner, John, and he goes in the Derby the right way, as opposed to maybe some horses that are over-raced right now, and you wonder if they're going the wrong way. And I am a little concerned about Gunnevera. Is he going the wrong way? He's going to have to be one that will physically show me that he's still on top of his game in Louisville.
All right, well, let's talk about this weekend's races, and let's talk about the Grade 2 Wood Memorial. You know, they downgraded this from a Grade 1 to a Grade 2. But, Joel, we see quite a few contenders from the TCI Top 10 in here this weekend. But there's a horse I'm interested in. Last weekend, we thought that Battalion Runner may go out to Santa Anita and run the Santa Anita Derby. Shows up here in the Wood Memorial instead. Tell me, what do you think?
Well, you know, I know that they were, you know, really, you know, at a crossroads on what to do with this horse. You know, with Always Dreaming, I mean, it's a good position to be in. Your same ownership group has Always Dreaming, who obviously did what he did in the Florida Derby. They made the right call there. Battalion Runner, who was also entered in that race with no intention really to run, they thought, you know, maybe let's go to the Santa Anita Derby. It's coming up week. You know, it's a Grade 1. I mean, it's a stallion-making race to make him a Grade 1 winning son of Unbridled Song. But the ownership group is from New York, a large contingent of them anyway. So I think in the end they felt like, well, let's go win the Wood Memorial. It's a Grade 2. But if we can run well in there, we can still make the Kentucky Derby and hopefully get a Grade 1 from this colt later on down the line. So I think that's what the thinking there was with Battalion Runner. And I also think Pletcher may be more comfortable shipping to New York as opposed to all the way out to California. It's really racking up a lot of miles on his horse. So an interesting change of events there. I do think Battalion Runner in the Wood Memorial. Look, we talked about the Wood as maybe a maligned prep this year, and it's not going to get, you know, many top horses, but I count 3 colts in the TCI Top 10, John. I mean, you want to compare it to the Bluegrass, that has 3 colts that we have in the TCI Top 10. So, you know, really not a bad field in here. And Motown used to be on the TCI Top 10. So it'd be interesting to see if Motown can bounce back. We know he likes Aqueduct. Battalion Runner, to me, he's the speed. He's a cruiser. He's not a turn-of-foot type horse, John. I really think he's one that you have to get into a quick rhythm and allow him to power on. I mean, a lot of these Sons of Unbridled Song are like that. He strikes me as that kind of horse. So I think Johnny V is going to aggressively ride him out of the gate. I think he's going to get him at a high cruising speed, probably setting that pace. We'll see what True Timber does with Paco Lopez and Kieran McLaughlin there if he, you know, tries to be a pace presence here, because again, pace makes the race. If Battalion Runner is able to get into a rhythm and he's forwardly placing here, I don't think anybody's going to catch him. Motown, I think, is going to try to stalk. You look at your other contenders in this race, John, and you look at, you know, Irish War Cry. He'll try to stalk from the outside 6th position. But frankly, I think a Battalion Runner isn't harassed too badly up front. It's not a monster pace, and he's able to get into that rhythm. I really like Battalion Runner to prove best in here, John. And it'd be interesting to see, you know, in terms of closers, how good's Cloud Computing gotten? Yeah. You know, can Cloud Computing make a rally in here, justify his spot in our TCI Top 10 and show that he might be a late-coming Derby type?
All right, well, it'll be interesting to watch for sure and see if Irish War Cry can get back to his form. I know he's a horse that people thought kind of lost his form, and it sounds like he's doing well, so it'll be a fun race to watch for sure.
Hey, he's number 6 on our TCI Top 10. The talents there, he's a son of Curlin. To me, he's got a quick action, and he's been a little too keen for my liking in his races. So I want to see him be able to settle, get into a better rhythm early, and then show a turn of foot late, because there's just something about him that, to me, I've always had a guarded opinion about Irish War Cry, even when he was so impressive in the Holy Bull. So to me, he needs to really bounce back this week and show that he can start Battalion Runner and kick home and kick clear and show that maybe, hey, he could be a top 5 Derby contender like many thought he could.
All right, let's go out to Santa Anita now, and let's talk about the Santa Anita Derby. You know, Joel, this race has got some horses that people have kind of been watching and thinking about and saying, you know, let's see how they do. Of course, we got American Anthem, ran, you know, poorly in Arkansas, but he's coming back. The connections think that he's doing fine. There's a horse in there, Battle of Midway. I've heard of him a lot. And then Reach the World is a horse that I've been really interested in. I've been watching him breeze there on the XB FBTV. Tell me a little bit about those horses and who you think is going to take the Santa Anita Derby.
Well, they came out of a slow allowance race, reached the world in Battle of Midway. I thought Battle of Midway had some real potential when he broke his maiden, but to me, he's been a little on the disappointing side. Even his allowance win last time out, I mean, it was a slow race. Got an 84 Beyer speed figure. That's not going to cut it this time of year, John. Reach the World, to me, he looks like the Belmont Stakes horse. You know, if I'm projecting forward like we do, he's got that Galileo, you know, big rangy type frame, and the way he comes with his closing kick and that female family. To me, he's not quite fast enough to beat these North American colts yet, but maybe going a mile and a half in June, that may be where you go back to Reach the World and say, you know, he's got a real shot in that race. To me, he's just not fast enough right now, John. But I will say, this is a pretty slow group. I mean, there's one horse in the TCI top 10, that's American Anthem, has been very disappointing, and he's on the bottom end of our list, and Gormley was on the list earlier this year, and he's off. I think it's between those two horses. I really do. I think the Sham is going to be the key race in here. I think American Anthem with Martin Garcia, and again, if you watch his workouts in the morning, instead of Bob having a rabbit to the inside that he's trying to finish, target and finish off of in his works, that didn't work out in Arkansas so well. He's a big colt. I think they're wanting to use his cruising speed a little bit more here. There's a lot of closers in this race and really no defined speed signed on. So I think Martin Garcia coming on with American Anthem, and you look at his works to where he's been on the rail and he's been forwardly placed with a workmate in his works, in particularly a two back. I think you're going to see Bob send him out of the gate, let him get into that high cruising speed of his, and see if he can take a mile and eighth. I mean, he has a pedigree to love a mile and eighth. So I think you'll see American Anthem show speed, and Gormley, I think you'll see him stalk. Now, what happened to Gormley in his last race? I mean, it was such a clunker. It was like American Anthem. It's hard to forgive when they throw a clunker like that, but who knows? Maybe he was sick, or you just never know the full ins and outs of the story there. Gormley's shown he loves that track. Mile and eight should be no problem. I believe they're the class of the field. I don't believe any of these colts that are on the upswing, like Reach the World, Battle of Midway, even Iliad. I question him going a mile and an eighth, 16th of a mile further. Royal Mo, to me, is not as good as Gormley, the stablemate. So again, it's not a great field. The Sham's the key race. Look for American Anthem to be forwardly placed. Look for Gormley to try to stalk in here too. I think it's those two that kick away in the stretch.
And I know there was a horse too, just to mention, I mean, not just because it's our sponsor, but there is a Temple City in there that you've been talking about the last few weeks. Tell me, what do you think of his chances in there? You
know, I watched his Breeze the other day, and he has a quicker type action as well. You know, I was hoping to see a horse, you know, with a longer, you know, scopier frame, a longer stride to him. To me, is a quicker type action, and even though he's by Temple City, you want to say, I haven't seen a sprinter by Temple City yet. I know he has some quality. You know, maybe he'll like two turns, going around two turns. He certainly is better on dirt than the turf. It's all encouraging. But when I saw him in that quicker type action in his work, John, it made me a little concerned that maybe he is a one-turn type colt, more like the Sky Mesa side of his female family. Maybe he's not going to stretch out. So Kim Bear, you know, I still think as an outside shot, if he can handle two turns like his pedigree says, he's shown enough quality, and this isn't a great field. So I can see why they scratched out of the Sunland Derby and went into this spot.
All right, well, now let's look right here in our own backyard. It's the Bluegrass Stakes, another race that was downgraded to a grade 2. Joel, we were concerned that maybe this race was not going to draw some key contenders, but I got to tell you, man, this race, looking at it this weekend, man, it is tough, and it includes the TCI #1 right now, and that's McCracken, who looks like he's doing really well.
May not be a grade 2 for long, John. I mean, you know, if they're going to get this type of field, and, you know, it figures, you know, being in Kentucky, being here, a lot of these horses will be based out of Keeneland and Churchill to acclimate a month before the Derby. I mean, you can see why this could be a top destination race again, particularly now that we're, you know, several years removed from the Poly track, and it drew a grade 1 level field. I mean, it's a crime that it's almost said that they're going to have to run for grade 2 designation here. But, you know, when you've got horses like, I mean, top heavy, McCracken, #1 on our TCI top 10, obviously. You know, J-Boy's Echo, I think, is a colt with a big upside and the right style to be a Derby outsider. I seriously do. Taprit. I mean, has there been a horse that's improved more than him over the last few months and really lived up to his frame and his pedigree? There has not been. I mean, he's really raised and elevated his game. And then Practical Joke. I mean, here's a horse that, again, stamina aside, whether he can get 2 turns in the distance, he's a legit top-class grade 1 colt, John. So I look at this field, and to me, the main storyline is, aside from the quality, is where's the speed in the race? I see no pace in here at all. I mean, you drew, you know, a relatively short field, but there is no speed sign on. I think Wild Shot and one of these outsiders, maybe IRAP with the blinkers on, even though he's not a quick colt, and maybe even Practical Joke, John. I think maybe you could see them get ridden out of the gate to sort of get a tactical edge in here. And I think it's all going to come down to a jockey's type race, because I just don't see anywhere there's going to be a fast pace in this race unless maybe Wild Shot runs off. You know, it's just totally unforeseen the way that they've been rating this colt. So again, what kind of prep will this be for when I'm looking at the top contenders? J-Boy's Echo, 1 run, turn of foot closer. Same thing with McCracken. Tappert really came around when he closed in the Tampa Bay Derby. Now, he's shown speed in the past. If Tappert wants to win this race, I think he can, because if it's a slow pace and Ortiz takes that tactical advantage and makes a middle move to sort of get into position and gets the jump, I think he can power away and beat McCracken in this race. But will that be what they want to do? I mean, that's what's interesting in handicapping this. How many trainers are trying to win this weekend, and how many of them are trying to set themselves up best for the Derby? If it turns into a European type race where nobody takes a tactical edge and they go through a slow pace, and they turn for home and everybody's compact, one of the horses with a turn of foot's going to win, and that's McCracken or J-Boy's Echo if he's really approved. But I think McCracken's the horse with the best turn of foot. I think he's the best horse in this race. But look, if Tappert wants to take a tactical advantage here, I think it'll be tough for McCracken to catch him. That's be very interesting. Again, the jockey's race. Who wants to win this weekend and who wants to win the first Saturday in May? That's 2 questions that I can't answer, but it'd be interesting to see how it unfolds.
All right, well, thank you, Joel, and thank you guys for watching. Make sure you come back next week. We'll see how the TCI #1 does this weekend.